Truth, accountability, and justice. Let's get dialed in. Hello, Texas Patriots. Welcome to the show where we call out the crazy, call in the fearless, and call it exactly as we see it. Now, if you've spent more than 5 minutes watching the news or sitting through the Texas House trying to get something done, you know that things in our great Lone Star State have been, let's call it, eventful. But today, my friends, we're diving headfirst into 3 things that are lighting up Texas politics right now: lawfare, the state of the Republican Party, and why we're paying judges less than a Buc-ee's manager with a decent overtime package. And who better to break it all down than today's guest? He's the man who makes the gavel look good. Now, when you think about judges, you probably picture someone in a black robe who sits quietly on the bench, nodding seriously, and saying things like sustained or overruled. Well, we've got someone here with us who's breaking that mold. Judge Mitch Templeton is a Texas State District Court judge with a spine of steel, a sharp mind, and let's be honest, a sense of humor rarer than bipartisan agreement in Congress. Judge Templeton is the guy you want on the bench when justice really matters. Someone who follows the Constitution like it's a GPS and doesn't take detours through woke nonsense. He's not here to legislate from the bench or play politics. He's here to do what judges are actually supposed to do: uphold the law. A shocking concept these days, I know. Judge Templeton has seen it all, from legal arguments that could put a caffeinated lawyer to sleep to courtroom antics that could rival a reality TV show. This man has held his ground with grace, grit, and probably more patience than most of us could muster. But beyond the robe and the courtroom, Judge Templeton is also a proud Texan who believes in good old-fashioned values, hard work, common sense, and calling things as they are. And in a time when some judges seem more interested in making headlines than decisions, Mitch Templeton stands out like a 10-gallon hat in a room full of baseball caps. Today, we're going to get to know the man behind the bench, what drives him, what he's fighting for, and why the rule of law is more important now than ever before. So stay tuned, because Judge Mitch Templeton is here with us, and you're not going to want to miss what he has to say. And joining me now is Texas State District Court Judge and my friend, Mitch Templeton. Thanks for coming on, Your Honor.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Shilo.
Yes, sir. So one of the concerns that I've had, Judge, for a number of years now is the weaponization of our judicial system. We've seen it play out in many different examples across the United States. But I want to ask you to drill down more specifically to closer to home for folks who are watching this. What are some of the more alarming ways that lawfare is being used right here in Texas?
I think the last time you and I discussed this, I was really concerned about the conflict between the Biden administration and specifically the DOJ's lawsuits against the state of Texas trying to halt or hinder border enforcement. And our Jefferson County District Attorney, Keith Giblin, does a great job reaching out to the public, talking about the devastating effects of fentanyl on our community and our communities in the entire nation. And that fentanyl is coming across the southern border. So my greatest fear and my greatest concern in terms of the two entities fighting it out in the courts has really been resolved to a large extent by the election of Donald Trump and the wholesale changes that I imagine we'll be seeing at the DOJ. So I think that's good news. If I have any good news for you tonight, that would be one thing. To me, that was the most concerning litigation, lawfare, whatever you want to call it, that was occurring. And I think that's been resolved and to a large extent alleviated by the election of President Trump.
I think that changed the calculus on many different issues, and certainly border security and enforcement would be foremost among them. How would you characterize the current state of the Texas Republican Party? What's our major problem or challenge?
Growing pains, division in Jefferson County in particular. We've made big strides in Jefferson County, but we've had a lot of divisiveness.
Within our own party.
Correct. And I think that that's the challenge statewide is how do we lead? Republicans have done well in gaining leadership. They don't do so well frequently in leading. And so the bigger challenges is how do we move forward, not only locally, but on a state level, because obviously there's a division. And I
Yes.
think that's, and it's specifically with regard to Jefferson County, the reality is, we have been sanctioned by the rest of the party and the rest of the state. And we have to do some self-reflection.
Some soul searching, if you will.
I think so. And that's a big challenge. Division, and if you look at counties like Montgomery County that have divided, and they're now perpetually divided, the way I see it, in at least two different Republican camps, maybe three, depending on who you talk to. In one sense, that requires more people to step up into leadership roles.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may not be a completely negative thing, but when you're being censored, as a party like we have been in Jefferson County,
Yeah.
I think we need to take a hard look at what we're doing and the positions that we take.
I agree with you. In fact, I couldn't agree more. And I think the divisiveness would subside if we would do as a party what the Democrats are frankly so good at doing, and that is unifying behind their agenda and their platform. I think where you see most of the division, at least in the Republican Party of Texas and more specifically Jefferson County, is that you have sort of this one faction of the Republican Party here who is all in on our platform and our agenda as a party, and then you have this other faction that says, we're not on board with this. And so I think if we can find a way to come together and unite behind principles and not personalities, it will serve us better. What are your thoughts?
That's why it's so important for us to have grace. We've got a lot of new Republicans, or relatively new Republicans at least, in Jefferson County. And so they don't really have a lot of longevity or history personally with the party. There's a lot of what I'll call kind of old school view of politics and politicians, which is focused on bringing home the bacon. Are they bringing home dollars to Jefferson County? And that's the measure. That's the test.
Yeah. How much money what are you doing for me today?
Right. And I'm not saying that, obviously looking out for the needs of your jurisdiction or the people that you're representing is very important. And I think our needs and the role that our county plays and the energy, especially of the nation, is crucial. And our infrastructure should be taken care of and supported by leadership in Austin and Washington. But that's not the only measure. We have principles, we have an ideology,
platform,
and those are important. And when there's a caucus, when leadership has developed a party platform, that needs to be paid attention to. It's important.
And that platform, the leadership that develops the platform, that takes place by way of delegates at the state convention. I would know. I was one. I'm sure you've been one in the past. And I've been one multiple times. So those delegates who are there at the state convention represent many people within their own communities. So this isn't some top-down approach that we're taking as a party. This is coming from the grassroots. And this is saying this is what the average Texan in our communities believes in and stands for.
And it's very important for that very reason. Now, that said, the grassroots needs to be realistic that we have a bipartisan system, bicameral House of Representatives and Senate in the state. And we're going to, when it's appropriate and we can, to use the maybe worn out phrase, reach across the aisle to work with Democrats for all Texans. But we have principles and we have a platform, and that's important, and it needs to be honored.
And I would add to that, I think there's a very important difference between the willingness to reach across the aisle and work with the other side on issues where we can find common ground. I'm sure we could, for instance, on the fentanyl issue. But I think there's a key difference in reaching across the aisle and working with them and giving them power, not giving them power. I think that is the fundamental approach to take is let's not cede any of the power that we've earned as Republicans at the ballot box by winning majorities that we work very hard to win, and then give that power away and surrender the power.
Well, and when you do that, when you cede power,
That's right.
willingly,
That's right.
People start asking, why am I working so hard? Why am I supporting you? Why am I giving money? If you're just going to walk away from the fight, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
And so those are important points that you're making.
Now, this next question I'm going to ask you is relates to a topic you and I have both discussed on multiple occasions as friends offline and off the air. But it's one that I know you feel very strongly about, and that is judicial compensation. Judge, tell me a little bit more about the state of compensation for judges in Texas.
Well, it's on a national basis. If you compare what state district judges or judges at my level, the highest trial court, make, we're at the bottom. We're literally the lowest paid judges in the nation. And so,
wow.
The thing about pay is you want to attract good people. And as Republicans, we need to learn how to facilitate people that want to be a judge, to get involved in the electoral process, the political process. We need to coach them up. We need to mentor them, show them how to run. But we also need to make sure that they're not making some huge financial sacrifice when they decide to run for and win the position of judge. And I think that's an important part of knowing how to lead. And what I was referencing earlier, Republicans are great maybe at getting leadership, but they got to maintain it. You're going to have a hard time. You can find guys like me. My family's been Republican all the way back to Eisenhower. I'm not going to change. I mean, I'll be 61 in April. I'm not going to change my political stripes. But a lot of judges are apolitical at best. They're Republican. They'll rule and govern, so to speak, conservatively. But you got to get them paid. You got to compensate them because they can go back to private practice
and make a lot more money.
I had the same concerns about our representatives and how little they are paid. So what you end up with is someone who in a representative capacity that is either self-made, a trust fund person, in other words, they're independently wealthy already.
Generational wealth.
Yeah. Or they're on the take.
Yeah.
And otherwise, how does a man or woman that has to feed their family afford to go to Austin?
Well, it's damn near impossible for most people.
It's and it makes people wonder how do people go to Washington on the salary that they make and walk away multi-millionaires? If we're going to have the integrity, the ability, the substance of the type of people that we want to be Republican candidates for the judiciary, we need to make sure that they're properly compensated. We're the number one state in terms of business. That's why one reason people are moving here by the millions. The frontline enforcement of the laws in the criminal statutes, the civil statutes that are pro-business, those are enforced. Those are in place. Those are upheld by your judges, ultimately. And you got to have good ones in place, or the leadership and the environment that you create is going to falter. So we have we've got, I don't know what the latest numbers are on the budget surplus. I think it was 32 billion going into this session. We have a huge budget surplus.
We did last time as well.
And judges have not received a base increase in pay since 2013. So, that's where we are. It's slow.
I believe it's to your point about our state legislators. I believe pay increase is even worse as far as how recently they've been compensated with a pay increase. I think that goes back even further. And I couldn't agree with you more about this sort of oligarchy that it creates in Austin, because what you tend to have are, like you just said, people who are either independently wealthy, self-made, or generationally wealthy, come from a trust fund. So you have this elitist class that ends up coming to power in Austin because you can't support a family on what they pay you as a state legislator, whether it's a state senator or state representative. So if you don't come from that tract, you've got to have an employer who is okay with you taking 6 months part-time every 2 years to go and be a voice in Austin. Some employers are okay with that, but many aren't. So what it does is it leaves out the regular everyday people who are oftentimes very smart and very capable from being able to go and represent their districts in Austin.
And you said 6 months, but that doesn't include special sessions.
That's right.
Which we have a long history of now in recent years. It's going to be more than 6 months.
Yep.
So those are legitimate concerns. And I think that we will, there's so much, there are so many hot topics and so much contention in Austin. I hope that judicial pay increases will be addressed. They were passed unanimously by the House in the last session and then killed in committee in the Senate. But it's kind of pitiful where we are. We had to form a state district judges association and hire a lobbyist.
Really?
So we have one branch of the government effectively having to hire a lobbyist to talk to another branch of the government. I mean, that's just the kind of development we're seeing and the incredible growth and the complexity of our state as millions and millions of new people move here.
If you could offer one piece of advice to fellow Republicans in Southeast Texas, Judge, what would it be?
Remain united. Listen to your fellow Republicans, even when you disagree. You most certainly have more in common with them than you do with people that are not in your party.
Agreed.
And so we don't have to agree on every single thing, but we need to discuss every single thing, and we need to try real hard to understand each other and stay united.
And let's not do it with anger. I would add to that.
Well, sure. I mean, that's actually calling for maturity and wisdom.
How about
which
that?
is also something I would advise everybody to seek.
Well, I want to thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was going to say the Bible says fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so you start there and you pray for wisdom every day. At least that's what I do.
Wise words from a wise man. I want to thank you, Judge, for coming on. Not only do I consider you a dear friend, but also a mentor. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You are a guy who sets a great example. What I'm telling you is I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, you might have to grow up just a little bit more, Shilo.
Oh, you and I both know that. Well, God bless you.
I'm going to try to coach you up, Shilo. I'm going to try to coach you up.
I'm all for it, my friend. Okay. I'm all for it. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Amen.
Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.